thought this evening we could spend some time discussing the topic of spirituality and success. Sometimes people have this notion that when someone becomes spiritual, when someone begins inquiring about what is beyond this world, when one looks outside of just the material at what more there may be to life, then they become somewhat disinterested in the world around them, that they don't have the same ambition and the same drive, that they don't really become equipped or empowered to then make a change and do something beautiful in the world. But the Bhagavad-gita actually says the complete opposite. That when you become spiritual, not only do your opportunities for success actually expand exponentially, but the way in which you're able to digest that success and utilize that success actually becomes life-changing for yourself and for other people. So today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about this. And I'm also going to be talking about creativity and how to unleash your creative side. Within each one of us, there is an innate creativity that we're invested with. And when we tap into that creativity and learn how to unlock it, then the full potentiality of our life can come about. But one of the biggest problems in the world today is that most people have lost their creativity. They've lost their ability to kind of look outside how their life is at the moment. And they've lost the bravery and courage to explore the unknown outside of what they're currently doing. And that perhaps is the greatest sadness of the world we're living in. When we lose our creativity, we lose our ability to experience the totality of life. On the next slide, I'm going to show you the daily routines of some of the most creative people in our history. And it's very, very interesting. I'm going to give you an opportunity to look at this. And what I'm going to ask you to do is look at this very, very closely and see what lessons can you learn from the chart that I'm going to show you that may help you to learn how to unlock your own creativity. So right here on the screen, these are about 9 or 10 of the most creative or some of the most groundbreaking people who really made changes in the world. Either they were artists, or they were scientists, or they were philosophers. In some way, shape, or form, they really made or introduced something amazing in the world. If you look here, then you can see there's a time. So this is like how they would spend their day, right? So this is midnight right here, and this is midday, and then all the way to the end of the day again. So this is how they would spend their 24 hours. And these are the different activities that are documented that they would do, right? Now what I'm going to ask you to do, just for like 3 or 4 minutes, is turn to the person next to you, or in threes or whatever. Look at this and ask yourself, what lessons, if any, can I draw from what I'm seeing here that might help me to unlock my own creativity? Yeah? Can I ask you to do that just for a few minutes? Yeah? So you can just have a look at it, speak to the person next to you, and just see what kind of lessons you start learning from their lives. Thank you so much. I think there's a lot to learn there. I mean, I have to admit, the first thing that I learned from the chart that I had in common with all of these creative people is that I don't do any exercise. I'm on the right track to unleashing my creativity, apart from that lesson. Anyone want to give us any lessons you learn by kind of looking at this chart, looking at how these creative people live their lives? Any insights, anything that came to your mind? Anyone want to share with us? Yeah, at the back there.
They don't have much of a day job.
They don't have much of a day job, yeah. And that's really, really interesting, actually, that one of the things that made these people so creative is they found a way to survive in this world doing what they loved, doing what they were really passionate about. Somehow or other, maybe some of them had just like big inheritances or something, but somehow or other they were able to create a life in which they weren't spending so many hours of the day doing something just for money. They were able to find a way in which to either make money from what is really meaningful to them, or they found a way to make money quickly and then spend time doing other things. Note some of these things if you want to unleash the full creativity. It's the most untapped potential within people. Thank you so much. Yes, anyone else? Yes.
There's no social media or Netflix time. So I feel like for me, that takes up part of my creativity time that probably I would be using. So that's something I need to work on. Less kind of like Netflix, social media, and then there'll probably be more creativity. And I'd be interested to know how big their creativity would be if they had social media and Netflix.
Definitely, yeah. They say we live in the age where there are weapons of mass distraction. So I'll tell you something interesting actually. I don't know if you've heard of the theory of boredom, but what happened 50 years ago is that people used to get bored, and when they got bored, there was nothing to do. So they started thinking. Nowadays, when people get bored, what do? They scroll. And that means that they don't think. So that's very interesting that somehow or other in this time there was a space for people to really think because the distractions were perhaps less. And that's something to really think about. Yeah, thank you so much. A great one. Yeah.
Like very few of them were sleeping past 7 a.m. whilst also they were staying up quite late.
Yes.
Yes, they were awake for a lot of the day.
Yes, they were sleeping very, very well. We say less because, like, for us, like minimum 9 hours, right? Actually, modern science says between 6 and 7 hours for most people is the optimum amount of sleep. And if we start sleeping more than we need to, it's a classic sign that our life is not interesting enough. When it's more interesting or more enthusing to sleep than be awake, then maybe we have a problem. So when you have something that's so capturing your imagination, then generally you'll sleep less. And so, yeah, they were sleeping less generally, and they were also rising early, apart from Picasso. That's an anomaly. Yeah, thank you, that was a good one. Yeah, something else, yeah?
They're really dedicated to doing something creative.
Yeah, can you see how much time they spend here doing creative work? Sometimes creative work is the thing that we sacrifice first. When life gets busy, when demands and responsibilities are there, then time doing things creatively is the time that goes out the window first. But they prioritized that, they ring-fenced that, they said that that is indispensable time. And what often happens in the world today is we just do the things which are urgent, which are pulling on us, which are demanded of us, but we don't keep that ring-fenced time to be creative. great one. Thank you. Yeah, anyone else? Yeah.
I'm a bit confused by what creative work entails. I'm assuming it's making music, writing, which all these people are famous for, so...
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. I guess it refers to kind of exploring their area of interest and experimenting with different things and interfacing with different environments or people who may be able to stimulate them in that area. Basically just going on an exploration.
Right.
And sometimes creativity is like, I don't know how many of you are writers, but I try to do a little bit of writing. And sometimes you can write for 3 days and come out with absolutely nothing. And I tell you, it can be the most depressing experience in life, because you think like 3 days and nothing to show for it. But the amazing thing is, unless you go through those 3 days, you won't get to the 4th day where everything just starts dropping. Once I was in India for a month, and my goal was to write a book. And I was in the holy place of Vrindavan. I was there for a month. I had no responsibilities. I had all my books. I had the peace and quiet and the tranquil atmosphere. And for 1 month, I was completely blocked. I just couldn't do anything. And I got on the Air India flight from Mumbai airport. And I was flying to Heathrow, so it's about a 9-hour flight. And I was just thinking, oh, the whole month I was in, nothing happened. And on this 9-hour flight, I didn't put my pen down. Somehow or other, on this flight, full of screaming babies, the terrible Air India food, no offense. Like this economy, cheapos-y, and when you're 7 foot tall and you don't have any leg room, it's 10 times worse. And there I was, and it was just flowing. And I basically wrote the whole book in 9 hours. And I don't know. What I realized is that I needed that month. I needed that month to go through it. And so, in the world today, everyone is constantly asking us, what do you have to show for what you've done? We feel a need to show something to the world. And therefore, we tend to do the things that will get the acknowledgement and appreciation of others. And in that, our creativity sometimes goes, because in creative work, you don't always have something to show. So it's quite interesting, yeah. Thank you for raising it. Anyone else? Any lessons you learned? Yeah.
So I see 3 predominant colours, which is sleep and the creative work, but they've also, apart from the first one, made time for food and leisure. So for me, what I take is that sometimes you need that break. Well, like, for example, my creative work, if I'm constantly in it,
Yes.
sometimes this is rubbish, this is no good. But when I've taken that break, like to go for a walk in the woods or something,
Yeah.
and it'll come to you when you're away from being just surrounded by that creativity.
Definitely, yeah, that's such a good point. That sometimes when we're trying to do something creative, we're just trying to force it and push it through and just make it happen. And sometimes you just need to try and then step away. And in that time when you step away, sometimes it just comes to you, isn't it? Like when you're not even thinking about it. And so that time to also disconnect and nourish yourself and be balanced in your life and just take care of your body, your mind, that's also a really important part of being creative, yeah. Thank you. One last one, anyone want to share? Anything you learned from that? Everyone's good? Okay, yeah?
It's got long stretches of creativity, but most of them being long.
Yeah, so sometimes you need to do it for some time, give it a bit of time. It's like brewing a tea, or you need to kind of just keep it on the stove and just keep stirring it, and it gets richer. Yeah. So I want to share with you also that in the world there have been many disruptors. In the world, they talk about disruptive brands, like, for example, Apple or Netflix or Uber or Airbnb. People who came in and kind of disrupted the way the world works. And disruptive thinking is like a huge thing in the world today. And if you look at all the disruptive thinkers, the ones who really were able to find new, better ways of doing things, they kind of all incorporated some of these things. The first thing is, their philosophy is fail more. Sometimes in life, we're just scared of failure. We're scared of how people will judge us, what we'll look like, and therefore we don't even try because we're scared of failure. But when you're successful, all that does is it reconfirms what you already know. There's actually very little growth from success, although that makes us feel really good. But when you fail, it's a great opportunity to grow, to think about things in a different way. And therefore, if you want to be more successful, it's the law of averages. Fail more, and you'll succeed more, and you'll succeed in bigger ways. This is interesting. Incubate your ideas. Sometimes a creative idea will come to you, and in that moment, you can't do anything with it. And therefore, you just think, oh, just throw that one away. But no, any creativity that comes with you, hold it, keep it. And if it's not something you can do anything with now, just let it, just incubate it. And just let it grow and see what comes of it over time. Creative thinking means challenge everything. They say the most dangerous phrase in the English language is, we've always done it this way. And therefore, always ask yourself, is there a better way to do things? And ask yourself an even deeper question, are there better things to be doing? Challenge everything. Progressive exposure means expose yourself to new environments, expose yourself to new types of people, expose yourself to new interactions. And by doing that, by exposing yourself to newer things, you grow your capacity to think in a creative way. And teamwork makes the dream work. Creativity we often think of as something we do in solitude, and that's definitely there. But creativity thrives in community. And therefore, when you're together with others, bouncing ideas around, asking, learning, they say if you're the smartest person in the room, then you need to change room. It's good to be around people who can uplift and elevate your vision of life. So can you begin to see, I'm just sharing with you today, that success is found upon creativity. That means success in any field, whether it's material or whether it's spiritual. Specifically here today, we're talking about spiritual success and spiritual creativity, but the principles remain universal. And so these are just some initial thoughts for you. We're going to do a little bit of an interactive exercise in a minute. But I just want to ask you, what makes the difference? Firstly, I think we all agree spiritual people can be ambitious. Right? I think we all agree with that. What would you say is the difference between a spiritually ambitious person and a materially ambitious person? If both of them can be ambitious, if both of them can be successful, if both of them are trying to do something incredible, what differentiates a spiritually ambitious person from just simply a materialistically inclined ambitious person? Can you share some ideas with me? Yeah.
Selfless. Spiritual person is
a spiritual person is selfless. So, oops. Sorry. Selfless. Thank you so much. Yes. Yes.
I think a spiritually ambitious person is trying to achieve whatever they are for themselves for the right reasons, whereas somebody who's materialistically ambitious is probably trying to achieve something to attain a greater sense of self-worth.
Okay, so it's done for the right reasons, and it's done how would you word that in one or two words? Being authentic?
For insincere or
Yeah. Okay, there's a sincerity there. Yeah.
Benefits a lot more people.
Benefits others. A spiritually ambitious person is not just being ambitious for their own materialistic, selfish benefit, but it also benefits many others. Thank you. Yes.
That a spiritually minded person, they are sort of empowered by others or by a higher authority, whereas someone who's materialistic believes in themselves and draws on their own strengths.
So there's a sense in which a spiritually ambitious person is egoless, or they see that there's a higher power which is driving their success and underpinning that success. Yeah, at the back.
I was going to say something similar. Their drive comes from within apart from being external.
I think that was, that one. Drive from within. Yeah, wonderful. They're detached. Amazing. A spiritually ambitious person tries their best, they give 100%, but there's an inner detachment in that full endeavor. Yes, wonderful. Great point. Yes.
They are very determined and disciplined.
Determined and disciplined. Would you say material people are also determined and disciplined?
But sometimes what happens, materialistic people, if any reversal comes, they break down. But spiritual people have a sense of
Even higher, they have a higher determination because they're driven by a more noble cause. Thank you so much, yes. Yes.
They define success differently, right?
Uh-huh.
The goalpost is different.
And what is that difference in definition?
The material person is driven by the material sort of wants or whatever he can achieve, and the spiritual person probably defines success differently. More the journey, more the process.
Okay, yes. A spiritual person is interested in the journey and the process more than the results. Thank you. Yeah.
Identity. So they know who they are, like a spiritual person would know, understand, done the self-inquiry to know their true identity. So that would pervade the whole ambition.
Yes, so there's a real sense of identity, and there's an orientation to what they're doing in the bigger picture. Thank you. These are great, yeah.
It follows them wherever they are. So, say they were on a desert island, it would be there with them, whereas the other person wouldn't necessarily have all their stuff with them. So, whatever situation in life they are, it's with them. They don't have to be around all the things.
It's not dependent on externals. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah.
I find them non-violence towards the outer goodness.
Okay, that's a beautiful one. It's not. They don't. They're very sensitive and how to say conscious of how they pursue success. It's not this kind of dog-eat-dog kind of thing. Yeah. Excellent. Yes.
I'd say spiritual people who are ambitious are more content. They're not always just reaching for more.
So there's generally a sense of contentment. And if they're content, then what do you think is driving them to do more? If a materialistic person, their lack of contentment drives them to try and do more and more and more, then what drives a spiritual person? Because if they're content, it's kind of like, well, then why would I do anything more?
It's like one's coming from a higher place, the other's coming, so the spiritual person comes from a higher place, the materialistic person is coming from a place of lack. or wanting.
Okay, yes, so a spiritual person is coming from a place of abundance and not a lack. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Yeah, spiritual person is coming from a place of love, service, whereas the material person is coming from a place of fear.
Okay, yes, love, not fear. Many people who are trying to achieve things in the world are just doing it because they want to be accepted, they want to be acknowledged, they fear that if they don't have that success, then their life is going to be less in some way, shape or form, but a spiritual person does it as an outpouring of love. Beautiful, yeah.
They might have more purpose.
There's more purpose. What is the purpose? Because a materialistic person has purpose as well.
A higher purpose to maybe help change other people's lives.
Okay, so service and contribution. Thank you. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll stop there.
I think that for a spiritual ambition, it's a case of more surrender and being a vessel, and allowing God or the higher power to move through you, which is driven through love of God, and then the inspiration to serve comes.
Amazing, yeah. They see themselves as an instrument, as a vessel, and not the doer, not the controller, but someone who's just channeling a higher energy. Thank you so much, it was beautiful.
The spiritual person is investing in something permanent, whereas the materialistic person is investing in something which is ultimately going to have to be left behind one day.
Eternal, yes. There's an ancient Sanskrit aphorism that one who gives up the temporary for the eternal loses nothing, because the eternal is eternal and the temporary, they were going to lose it anyway. So in that way they give up the temporary for the eternal and they look for a permanent benefit. Yeah, wonderful. And there was one more here, is it? Yeah.
So I think spiritually ambitious people live in the present as opposed to people who aren't spiritually ambitious.
Mm-hmm. So they're living in the present. It's not that they're just kind of visualizing a future success and living with that success in mind, but they have a plan, they have a goal, they have an endeavor, but they're enjoying and they're relishing the present. They're fully content in the now, not waiting for that success to make their life meaningful. Isn't it beautiful that a spiritual person can be successful in a very, very beautiful way? And we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but I think it's a good time to we'll split up a little bit and we'll just give you guys a little bit of time to speak to each other. And what we just want you to share with each other, like you did in the last exercise, just a few of you together, what is your ambition in your life? What do you see as success in your journey? What difference do you want to make? Do some of these things kind of resonate with you? What are you struggling with in terms of how you pursue success in your journey at the moment? And see what questions may come up, and then we'll just kind of feedback together, have a little bit of questions and answers, and just see if we can kind of go into this a little bit deeper. Is that okay? Yeah, so just give you guys a few moments, just share with each other what are your ambitions, the achievements, the wonderful things that you're trying for, and how does this relate to your life? Yeah, give you some time to. So, thank you so much for sharing with each other, and in a moment we're just going to kind of open up and maybe you have a comment, or maybe you have a question, or maybe you have a reflection. We're just going to spend 15 minutes just like an open forum, just discussing with each other. And just before we do that, I'm just going to show you one thing, just to perhaps, we came out with a lot of different points about ambition and spiritual ambition. But just to kind of simplify it very, very, maybe to make it a little clear. Basically, all of us may have some amazing thing that we're trying to achieve in the world. Whether someone is spiritual, whether one has no spiritual orientation, most people have something that they're trying to achieve. The difference with a spiritual person is basically what follows that achievement and what happens before that achievement. So for a spiritual person, the achievement in and of itself is not the success, but it's the service and the contribution that comes from that great thing that they've achieved. And what comes before for a spiritual person is the character, the intention, and the effort. What basically happens in the world today is that if someone has no spiritual orientation, then generally what happens is that the focus goes here. Constant meditation about the great thing that they're trying to achieve, and that becomes their preoccupation, their obsession. But for a spiritual person, they put their attention and effort here. For a spiritual person, when the day comes to an end, they measure their success not on what they achieved in that day, but they measure their success of that day in what was their character, their intention, and their effort that they invested from their side that goes into that great thing they're trying to achieve. And when they've achieved it, that in itself is not success. They put their attention on what to do with that great thing to make other people's lives beautiful. And so in this way, a spiritual person can be incredibly ambitious, but they're more focused rather than on the achievement of it, what goes into that success and what comes out of that success in terms of service. And when we approach success, achievement, ambition with this kind of vision in mind, then life becomes beautiful and the world becomes beautiful. So I'll just stop there and pause for a moment. All of you were kind of discussing with each other a little bit about your visions, the great things you're trying to achieve. Maybe you discussed a little bit about the mindset of a spiritually ambitious person. And so we've got a little bit of time now. I don't know if any of you would like to share maybe a reflection or something that came out in your discussions with your partners or your groups, and whether you may have any questions on success, on ambition, on achievement, that we can kind of address in this forum. So yeah, does anyone have anything they'd like to kind of share or kind of bring up? Don't be shy. It will be nice to hear from all of you. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. It's really great to be here and very grateful. So I wanted to ask a question actually, and you mentioned just before when you said sometimes people say we've always done it this way, and that we're to challenge everything. So I wanted to ask you, on your spiritual journey, and I'm talking about my spiritual journey too here, you come across things where people perhaps say we've always done it this way, and and injustices that you might feel within. And I'm just struggling, or I have struggled with, where do you draw the line at losing your peace to kind of maybe approach an injustice, and where do you just leave it and allow God, because sometimes I see or hear things that I just feel like are so upsetting and wrong, but I don't want to lose my peace. And so I just say, God, that's not my battle, and I just keep my inner peace. But then I have this niggling feeling of, but there's an injustice in why am I letting someone else do the job, or why am I letting someone else fight the battle? Do you see my question? I'm not articulating brilliantly.
Yeah, as I understand what you're saying is that sometimes in a spiritual tradition or a spiritual community, people say this is how things have always been done, but to you, or from your vision, that feels like an injustice, something that's disempowering, or not allowing people to rise to their potential. And how much should you get involved in trying to address that injustice? Is that kind of?
Yeah, without losing the peace.
Without
You don't
losing
want
the
to lose your
peace,
peace,
yeah.
right? Well, I don't want to lose my peace. So sometimes I just surrender to it and smile and leave that to the side and carry on. But I feel guilty for not maybe fighting for it.
That's such a good point, yeah. I think the first thing to say in response to that is that everything that is said within a spiritual community that is tradition and is all the way we've always done things is not always true. Because just like anything in the world, even spiritual communities and spiritual traditions are susceptible to being deviated and kind of losing their principles. And therefore I think questioning is always good. I think if you ever come to a spiritual community where questioning is not encouraged and questioning is not entertained, we should probably be worried. Because even if you look at the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna is always encouraging Arjuna to question, to challenge, to try to just really open his heart so that all his dilemmas and confusions disappear. So Einstein, he said, never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. So I think it's good to question, and if we do see something that could be improved, I think coming out of our comfort zone as a sacrifice to help other people is a beautiful thing. But the key is to understand when you've gone to the point where you can do as much as you can do. And that's then where that detachment has to kick in. I think the reason why people become consumed when trying to endeavor for something or change by something or when they try to change something, why they become overwhelmed is because they don't know that point at which to just say, I've done what I can do. Now a higher power has to act. So Krishna talks about this in the Bhagavad-gita to Arjuna, where he says you should do your duty and you should act responsibly. And then when all is said and done, you need to step away and realize that you're not the controller. And when we're able to do that, act but be detached. That's what we call in the Bhagavad-gita karma yoga. Then I think that's kind of like the balance that we're looking for. Hope that helps. Yeah, thank you. Yes?
So I'm thinking about the different kinds of career I can aim for over the next period of my life. And there's a career in which I can help others financially by taking a high-paying job.
Yeah.
There's a career in which I can help others because it's a job which benefits others directly. And then there's a career in which I can take 2 to 3 months off every year to practice spirituality.
What job is that?
I think I can get 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
But not all 3.
All 3.
So which 2?
Which 2 are the most valuable?
Let's say for the next 10 years of my life. I don't expect a perfect answer for both my life, but at least for the next wee while.
It's amazing you should say this actually, because I was going to talk about this. But I think there's basically 2 broad ways in which people go. I've seen spiritualists go. One type of spiritualist tries to intensify their career because their career becomes their service and their contribution to the world. And I think there's another broad type of spiritualist who actually tries to simplify their career and just almost have like a passive income, and then open up a lot of free time to do something directly in the world that they don't make any money for, but that is their contribution to the world. So it seems that both paths are possible. And I think really it's about asking yourself, deep within yourself, number one, where can you make the greatest impact? But the second thing to ask yourself is that where can I also develop my own internal spiritual life as well? Because sometimes someone may intensify their career feeling that to be that great, amazing way in which they're spiritually going to contribute to the world. But in the process of intensifying their career, they lose their own spirituality. And then, as is said in the Christian tradition, what profiteth a man who gains the whole world but loses his soul? And so I think also it's really important to be honest that what do I need, not just to make my impact in the world, but what do I need to become the best version of myself? Because ultimately, we can't give anything to the world if we're not spiritually inspired, enthused, and nourished and strong ourselves. So that's kind of like some general thoughts. I don't know if that helps. I hope somewhat. If you want to,
I get one out of the two for sure. That's
Yeah.
a job which allows me the time to develop spiritually. I guess it's probably priority number one.
yeah. And it's not that those who are busy in their career can't spiritually develop.
Yeah, that's harder.
It is harder, yeah. It is harder. But you know, sometimes in the intensity, some people respond to that and they use that the time that they do have very wisely. And so I guess everyone's individual and everyone has a different type of personality, and so yeah. Okay. Yep.
On the back of your response to that question, what's the point in gaining everything if you're going to lose your soul? What are the symptoms of losing your soul?
Just go outside.
Ash said, go outside, turn left. With all due respect. I think when we become imbalanced on the three levels of identity, when we're striving to achieve something in the world and on a physical level we're suffering, our health is going down, we're losing our physical vitality, that's a warning sign. On the mental level, when you're trying to strive for something in the world, you have an ambition, an achievement, but on a mental level it's causing you worry, anxiety, it's affecting your relationships, it's bringing out a lower nature that you don't like. It's a warning sign. And on a spiritual level, when you lose sight of the fact that this is for service, that what you're actually achieving in the world is not meant for your own enjoyment, but is meant for making the world a better place, serving those around you. When you lose that vision of why you're actually trying to do this, who you're doing it for, then there's a good chance that in your success you've failed, because you've risen to the top, but you've forgot why you wanted to get there in the first place. So that's why it's really, really important to always step back and observe and disconnect and just see how we're doing on our journey. Because while you're in the intensity of it all, we can lose sight of the bigger picture. Hope that helps. Yeah. Okay.
Just a personal question for you. Now you've become a sannyasi for 1 year, and your sort of travel is higher, and your goals are bigger, more ambitions. What's your personal thinking, or how have you become even more ambitious and achieve all the things you want to do on a higher level? Because your way of thinking has to change, because you're obviously looking at the bigger picture now.
Yeah. So just to backtrack, Ash mentioned that 1 year ago I became a sannyasi. For those who may not be familiar, sannyasi is a vow that you take in which you dedicate yourself to lifelong monasticism and service to the world. So Ash is asking, in this last year things have naturally become bigger. Yeah, things become bigger for sure. This is the staff of a renunciate, and sometimes it just feels like an amplifier, because when you carry that around, everything seems to get bigger. So how have I kind of navigated that? I was telling Raj actually that for me in this last year, something quite beautiful has happened, which is that my enthusiasm about making an impact in the world and my enthusiasm to go deeper in my own exploration and search for divinity, those have almost, they inspire me equally now. And I see that those two aspects of my inner journey and my external contribution, I see that they're actually seamlessly integrated. And that if I really want to give something to the world, then I have to be experiencing it. I have to be realizing it. I have to be breathing it. And therefore you see when we go around, we talk about wisdom that breathes. Because when we try to share with people, we're not just trying to give you some book knowledge or some scripted talk. But what we're really trying to genuinely share is something that we've experienced. And so in this last year, as the opportunity to serve more and more people has come about, the desire to want to give people something genuine by actually going deeper in my own spirituality has also expanded. So yeah, just some thoughts on that. Yeah. I see loads of hands. I don't know how we're doing for time.
Yeah, like one more question.
One.
One or two.
One or two, so 3 hands. Okay, so go here, Bryce, and then we'll go here. Yeah.
I was wondering how would you approach your daily routine? For instance, if you're trying to live a spiritual life, yet you also have certain ambitions or a career or something that you're trying to accomplish. For instance, at the temple, there's the morning program, there's the whole routine, the chanting, the kirtan. However, a lot of people wouldn't be able to have this type of routine. So
if they're out there trying to achieve things in the world.
Exactly. So I was just wondering. Everybody has their own daily, needs, daily things they need to take care of. But I was just wondering, an approach you'd recommend to making your own routine.
Yeah. Many of you have heard us. We regularly talk about the 5 a.m. club and the importance of joining the 5 a.m. club. Having that morning routine, having that time in the before the chaos of the world begins, to just ground yourself, to remember your vision, to remember your why. So what we would say is that it's really, really valuable if you can, in your life, develop that habit. Just make that part of yourself. But then you raise the point that sometimes in life you may have to live in a way that doesn't support that. The reality of life is that there may be periods in your life when you have to invest in, certain things outside of your spiritual routine that then disturb your spiritual routine. So the reality is that that may happen. But as soon as possible, we should try to get back to that spiritual routine. You see, in Ayurveda, which is the science of life, health, and living in harmony with your body, they say that half your stomach should be filled with solids, 1/4 should be filled with water, and 1/4 should be filled with air. And that air is required because otherwise the digestive process can't take place. So if you're trying to achieve things in the world and do things, and at the same time do it in a spiritual way for a spiritual purpose, it's going to be very, very difficult if in your day you don't have a time where you disconnect. And the best time to disconnect is the morning. But if for some reason you can't do that, it's just absolutely not possible, then create another time, and as soon as the opportunity arises, try to come back to that morning time. So in this world, you've got to be fluid, you've got to be flexible, you've got to move, but you always got to have the orientation of where you want your life to be and try to get back there. But I'm really, really stressing this morning time, rising before the sun, because I just find that is such a transformational thing. It really gives you a deep spiritual edge on the world if you begin your day in that way. So really try to integrate that. Some thoughts, I'm sure we can take it further, but we'll just have one more and then we'll wrap up for today.
Thank you for giving opportunity. Thank you so much for opportunity. I want to ask one question. Just like Arjuna has so much confusion and dilemma, and after opening the heart to Krishna, he was peaceful and able to act in his action, able to act whatever he said. In our life also we get so much confusion, there are so many decisions we need to make. And there are so much things going on in the mind if anything goes wrong. So how to, share those thoughts or take guidance from the spiritually minded people, even though they are there, how to open heart with them. Because I feel that if that is not happening, then mind is so much bombarded with so many things that we hardly able to concentrate on anything else. So sometimes they help. Sometimes it's taking a U-turn that materialistic people are much more happier than us because of this mind game, which is putting us in so much of bewilderment. So how to come out of this?
Thank you so much. So life is full of so much confusion, life is full of so many decisions and dilemmas that you have, and this really creates anxiety and congestion in the mind. And how do we deal with that? How do we process that? How do we navigate that? And Arjun asked Krishna the very same thing. Arjun says to Krishna that to control the wind, Krishna, I think is easier than to control the mind. The mind is so restless. In a beautiful verse he says, Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridam Tashyaham nigraham manye vayuri vasudushkaram. He says, Vayur eva, more than the wind, is even more difficult to control. But then in the very next verse, Krishna says, Asamsayam mahabaho manodur nigraham chalam abhyasena tu konteya vairagyena chagriyate. Krishna says there are two principles if you want to control the mind. The first thing Krishna says is vairagya. Learn to detach yourself from the mind. Instead of identifying with the mind, identify the mind. In other words, learn to be an observer of your own thoughts. Learn through spiritual wisdom to not feel the need to act on every thought or identify with every thought, but just learn to watch them. And then Krishna says, abhyas, practice. You have to direct the mind in a positive way. And this is very, very powerful because most people today think that the way to deal with the busy mind is to blank the mind. But you can't blank the mind. But what you can do is redirect the mind, reconnect the mind, create a reunion of the mind with something that's positive, that's something that's fulfilling, with something that actually nourishes the mind, which is divinity. And therefore, why do we do mantra meditation? Because it's a way in which to connect the mind. And by doing that, all the other things disappear. So we need to do this, we need to have this discipline to basically bring the mind to a much calmer state. And then yes, having spiritual friends is really, really important. In this world, if you even have 1 or 2 really good friends, you're lucky. Most people don't have that. But those friendships need to be invested in. Those friendships are friendships that you need to spend time developing. And therefore, just begin opening your heart and finding people who are like-minded, who you have some trust with, and who have some spiritual sincerity, and start connecting with them in a deeper way, and help them, let them help you to see your own mind and not identify with it. So
how can we be observer of the mind? Do we need to write down what is going on in the mind?
how do you become an observer of the mind? In one sense, it's very, very simple. Whenever the mind comes up with something, the first thing is, don't take it too seriously. The problem with us is that every time a thought comes, we take it so seriously. We think like, I have to do something with this. No. The mind is just like, it comes up with all kinds of things. So becoming an observer of the mind means don't take everything seriously. Don't feel the need to act on every thought of the mind. Try to see your thoughts through a spiritual lens. So instead of saying like, oh, this is my thought, this is what it is. See your thought and see that thought through spiritual wisdom. And then ask yourself whether that thought really needs to be taken seriously. So like through methods like this, we can actually, instead of identifying with the mind, we can identify the mind and gradually remold the mind. Thank you so much for coming and for being so participative and interactive. It's the first time we're doing this. So I hope there was some kind of, a few messages in there that you can take away with you. We're all here on, in one sense, different journeys, in another sense, the same journey. But I hope on your journey, there is some wisdom here that will be beneficial to you. And I guess now we'll conclude the evening with a bit more chanting. You up for that? Yeah? Okay, great. So, and now we can move to share. Thank you so much.